my name is Courtney. Welcome back to my channel and I hope you are doing so very well. I mentioned this on Instagram a little while ago and talking about my supply documentation project. Now, I know that we as artists and crafters and makers love supplies. We love supplies and we are constantly inundated with supplies from social media, from our friends, from ads, from YouTube videos. We're always consuming what's new, what other people are using. I love watching what's in my bag, what's in my pencil case, what's favorite art supplies, monthly favorites, all that sort of thing. But I find that sometimes when someone says, you know, what is your favorite supplies? And I will have to do an updated favorite supplies video because I find that I use the same things over and over and over again. I may buy quite a few supplies, but that doesn't mean they're supplies that are going to be a constant in my creative journey. So I wanted to do something totally geeky and nerdy, and I wanted to actually document each month the supplies that I used. And they weren't something that I used once. They had to be something that I used repeatedly in order to be something that I documented. Now, this was a series that I started on Patreon, but I decided that every other month I would switch my video from Patreon to YouTube. So one month it would be on Patreon and then the next month it would be on YouTube. That way that you guys got to see a bit of what I was using, and sometimes when I'm using the same things over and over, I feel like the videos get a little bit monotonous, but the whole point is I wanted to see exactly what I was using. So I'm actually using a Moleskine Cahier with a Sojourner folio. This is the book that I decided to use. And I have it in this one here. I have a little pen loop that I got in the stationery selection box. And this is the notebook that I've been using to document my supplies. And I would do it in a flat lay form, and I actually got this idea from Liz Steele, who liked to document how she packed for trips and what she used and what she didn't use and how often she used it. The geek in me was so happy with those posts of hers. They were so interesting to look at. It's always really interesting to see what an artist gravitates towards when they're trying to be minimal. So I decided that in the month, last year, I guess, I started this last year, that I would start documenting my supplies, and I started in July. And that was because in July, that's One Book July, and then there was the project, Go Big or Go Home. So I wanted my project to be a year-long thing, and I didn't post about it on YouTube because I didn't know if I'd actually pull it off. But I am being very consistent. The only thing that's happened is January and February are being morphed into one, because I find that in the start of the year, we're a lot less likely to make art. We're still getting used to the whole New Year thing and all that sort of stuff. So I definitely haven't been as creative and using as many supplies as I have in previous months. So for YouTube, you will get the January and February munched together, and then my March will be featured on Patreon. But I wanted to introduce this to you first so that you knew exactly what I was talking about. So this is your introduction video. You will see my January and February most used items in another video, but I just wanted to do an intro video so you understood the whole premise of this craziness, and it meant that you got 2 videos from me. So that's always a bonus. So what I used to do, what I still do, I kind of vary up how I present it to myself. I'm trying to find what I like, what I didn't like. I always liked to document my watercolor palettes, and that was the colors that I was actually using in my palettes at the time, because sometimes I like to change it up. And I always have a little portable one. I'll actually go grab it now so you can see. Just a sec. So my watercolor palette is just a little portable one, and these are the most used colors that I use, and it changes from time to time. So it's normally one that I can fit in my leather pen roll or something that I can travel with. I do have a lot of other watercolors in watercolor palettes, but this is my go-to palette. It is small, it's convenient, it packs a lot of punch, and it's what I've been tracking for this whole thing. So I would normally write down the colors that I've used, and if I've changed colors, that sort of thing, colored pencils I'm using, what sort of pens and things. We are always pen fiends. I know I'm a pen fiend, so I like to know exactly what things I am using from each month to month. The other thing that I like to document is carriers and pen cases and pouches. Now, I am totally obsessed with pen pouches and carriers and leather pen rolls. You name it, I'm obsessed with it. I've been a bag lover all my life. I have quite a large bag collection, but pencil cases are also a really big thing for me as well. I'm pretty sure I've done a pencil case collection video, and I'm pretty sure it's grown since that video. So I also wanted to see pen rolls and pen pouches and carriers in which I used in the month as well. So they were how, and slowly I've been trying to work out different things. I also wanted to document color ways and colors that I used predominantly each month. So I did use some of the Danielle Donaldson stamps, and I wanted to document colorways in which I used over and over again. Obviously pink will always be there, but sometimes I will lean on different color palettes, and it depends on what is prevalent in my work. So you've seen that in this month here, back in June, or when I started, this was where my color palette was, and then I switched my color palette on the 13th of July, and these are the colors that went into my palette. And so I always like to flat lay things, and I do it in such a way where I talk you through each things that I've used a lot, like collage and tapes and stuff like that. In this month, I obviously used a lot of my Mission Gold colors. My palette didn't change. And sometimes I talk about what I've used heaps. I make little lists and things. I do a whole heap of stuff. Now my color palette changed again in August to this one. And I am 90% sure that my color palette is this exact one. So my palette has been the same since the 16th of August. I have not switched any out. I have not changed any. The only thing I've done is I've refilled my Quin Gold, and I've refilled my Opera Pink because, you know, shocker, pink and yellow, favorite colors. So I do talk about the things that I'm using a lot. I am sketching daily-ish in the month of August, and so I have a sketchbook, what I use in my sketchbook, things that I've created, and color palettes that I'm working a lot with and working in my sketchbook. So the little notes that I've decided to take throughout the process so I can see exactly what I'm doing. In the month of August, I also used a lot of these colorways, and I also used a lot of my Neo color crayons because I started creating my Nook Dwellers again, which in the month of March will be a repeat process. But instead of using the Neo colors, I am actually using the Jane Davenport Aqua Pastels. So I'm giving these a run for the money, and so these will be featured in my March because they're what I've been using. So it is really interesting to see exactly what you're doing. A few other people have been doing this as well, because I like to know exactly what I'm using. And when I make recommendations to people, I want to recommend things that I actually use time and time again. Because there's no point in me saying, oh, I love this for 5 minutes, and then the person goes out and buys it, and then they don't love it, or they can't see why I love it, and then they wouldn't know if I've used it for 5 minutes or 5 months. So I want to be really thorough and nerdy and geeky about this whole process, so that is what I'm going to do. So I'm pretty sure I actually stopped my supply documentation in August, but I wanted to pick it back up in the new year and do a full 12 months of it, which is where we are up to at the moment. So I'm going to do January and February together, because I'm pretty sure the items that I used in January and February were the same sort of things, because I didn't really create a huge amount of stuff. But do know that my color palette is exactly the same, and I will swatch them out for you or tell you on screen what they are when I do the video. And I do show the items, and if I've made something with the items, I do show that as well. But this is like a little introduction to a series that you'll see every other month on my channel. And if you have any questions, you can pop them down below. But that is it. So this is the supply documentation introduction. And the next video you will see from me will be January and February. And the way that I present it is in a flat lay form when I talk about the items and actually show how I use them in little cutaway snippets. So I hope you've enjoyed that. It's only a quick intro video, but just to get you up to speed, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.